Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's presentation, Anthony Power and I are going to be talking about the recent ETF inflows, the price of Bitcoin, the resulting impact it's having on the Bitcoin mining companies that we cover, plus a few updates to the power mining analysis platform that you're going to be interested in hearing. Now, before we get into that, please take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's 100% free to do. It's a huge help to myself, Anthony, and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below what you've been doing with your portfolio in light of these recent gains. Which of the miners is currently your top pick for 2024 and your outlook or forecast in terms of the price of Bitcoin going into April's halving event. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's visit. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, a little bit of a variety hour for you. A number of topics that Anthony and I wanted to jump on and quickly discuss as we close out the middle of February here. So Anthony, welcome back. Looking forward to today's discussion.
Great to be here, Bryce.
So first things first, I know you and I have been working on power mining analysis. A big component of this platform, Anthony, is really these CEO interviews and that access you get to management. We've got a number of big interviews coming up over the next couple of days. We've got Hive on tomorrow, Frank Holmes. We then have Matt Schultz from CleanSpark on Thursday. We're also in talks with SATO Technologies to get Romain back on the program, and Riot CEO Jason Les towards the end of the month. So Anthony, as we're starting to get these CEOs on the channel, what are you seeing in terms of January results and the earnings that have been coming out over the last couple of days?
Yeah, we've had two companies release their earnings for the last quarter of 2023. So the first release was CleanSpark, and we covered that in a previous podcast. They had a net income, so they were positive for income for the quarter, and they had an adjusted EBITDA of about 69 million. So positive result come out. They were allowed to include the gain in Bitcoin valuation, which is the new FASB regulations that are coming out in 2024 for 2025. So miners this year are allowed to include the valuation when the crypto price increases. So previously they could only actually change the valuation if the Bitcoin price dropped. In 2024, they're allowed to show the actual increases. So this is more realistic position, because we know that the value of crypto for the last sort of 13, 14 months has been doing really well, and miners have not been previously able to show that. So CleanSpark were able to show it in their accounts. Hive released their numbers last night, and in a similar way they were able to show their gains in their accounts too. So this is a common theme now. We'll see a lot more miner results coming out. Iris Energy released their results this week, so looking forward to seeing those. They unreleased their results twice a year at the moment. So the challenge for the likes of me and other analysts is to then sort of like, how do we compare those results against other mining results when you've only got a 6-month set of results versus a quarterly set of results? So that'll take some thinking to do that, but we'll come up with some method to do it. Riot released their results at the end of the week, and as you quite rightly say, we've got Jason coming on the show next week, hopefully to talk through some of those results, talk through about the expansion plans they've got at Corsicana. So 2024 already looking to be a good year, and we haven't even mentioned the Bitcoin price yet, Bryce.
You're exactly right. The Bitcoin price, Anthony, has been a story in and of itself over the last couple of days. We're seeing massive moves. I know you and I talked about the ETF inflows versus the grayscale selling a couple of podcasts ago, but I wanted to jump into that again. I'll put a couple of tweets up on the screen here, Anthony. So I follow a number of accounts here. Shout out to the Twitter or X community for keeping us up to date on the ETF in and outflows. And I've been following these over the last couple of weeks. We were averaging, what would you say, Anthony, maybe about 500 million a day of buying?
About 400-600 million a day, I think was the number that came out, yeah.
Okay, and then for the first probably week to 2 weeks, the grayscale selling pressure was overcoming that buying pressure, right? And that's where we saw that sell-off. We covered this in one of our prior segments. Now we're starting to see a net inflow in the neighborhood of about $100 million a day. This is accelerating over the last 3 trading days. We've seen close to, I think, 1.44 billion of net inflows. So a tremendous amount of money that's coming in, and it's no longer being met with that selling pressure from people exiting their position with GBTC. So Anthony, my question to you is this sustainable on either side of the equation? Obviously, Bitcoin is a fixed asset. There's only so many Bitcoin available. And as we know, the majority, about 70% of people haven't moved Bitcoin within these wallets in recent history. We've also got a tremendous amount of buying pressure. And is that sustainable to continue to see $500 million a day of money being attracted into the Bitcoin ecosystem? So a doubleheader question for you. What do you think?
I mean, you've got to look at the buying pressure over the last 4 weeks. These funds have now accumulated more than 1% of the total amount of Bitcoin available. So at today's date, if you look at how many Bitcoin have been mined, we're at 19.6 million of Bitcoin has been mined. So you're less than 1.5 million to go, or just over 1.5 million to go of Bitcoin to be mined over the next 116 years. These funds have already received or attracted 200,000 of that Bitcoin. So they've already, if you look at it from like what's left to mine, they've already got like about 20% of the future, the future production that's available. So they're having to buy, obviously, where there's selling pressure. And Grayscale, they've been selling off Bitcoin there, and that's been snapped up, straight away. We know that, there's a good percentage of people, I think I read 70% of people who own Bitcoin haven't even moved it from a wallet in over 12 months. So that means those people aren't selling it. So you've only got then literally a small amount of Bitcoin on the market that's actually, being traded to a certain extent. And in the first month, if you've attracted 1%, what's that going to look like in the space of 12 months? And bear in mind, we come up to a halving in less than 10 weeks. And post the halving, the amount of Bitcoin per day mined, and we're talking mined per day, it's currently 900, that drops down to 450. So when we're seeing, these companies come in and buy, significant amounts of Bitcoin per day, they're buying, more than the actual amount of Bitcoin being mined per day. So they have to go out there and buy from people prepared to sell Bitcoin. And that's going to, put, like anything, if the demand is out there outstripping the supply of it, normal economics will tell you that the price will rise. And we've seen that rise over the last few days. If you just go back 5 days, Bitcoin price has risen about just about 10%. And then, we cover the mining stocks. What have the mining stocks done in the last 5 days? Well, I can tell you that CleanSpark are up 70% in the last 5 days. Iris Energy up 35%. Riot's up 37%. Marathon up 46%. Digital up 26%, Bitfarms up 32%. So all these mining stocks, multiple increases because the Bitcoin price has risen as well, but they're all performing better than the actual Bitcoin price has in the last 5 days. And that's, we keep saying what attracts people to get into the mining stocks. Once these ETFs have been approved, is it going to affect the mining stocks? Well, it doesn't seem to be affecting them at the moment, Bryce. I don't know what you think of the situation.
Well, a couple thoughts there, Anthony. Number one, whenever people talk about the Bitcoin supply or stock to flow, any of that, they always talk about the fixed cap. They talk about how many Bitcoin have been mined. But we got to remember that in addition to those 70% of Bitcoin that haven't moved in 12 months, you've also got companies like MicroStrategy that have huge positions. You've also got a lot of Bitcoin that's been lost. Passwords have been lost over the years. You've got the Satoshi wallet with 1 million Bitcoin in there, and a number of large profile investors that also really eat into that supply, right? So even more exponential potential for price movement. The other thing you mentioned, Anthony, is the leveraged results we're seeing from the Bitcoin miners. And this is really what attracted me to this space. A lot of the CEOs we've interviewed have said this is a leveraged or an option call strategy on Bitcoin, and we're really starting to see that come to fruition. I know for a lot of weeks and months there, it felt like there was a decoupling between the miners and the price of Bitcoin, and it was an uncertain time, and it's nice to see that's come back full circle, and we're seeing them move in tandem as we would expect, right? Now, in terms of the buying pressure, the $500 million a day, I think the number I saw was about 2,500 Bitcoin per day are being eaten up by these ETFs. Like you say, post halving, that goes down to 450 per day total production in the world. That's a 5-to-1 ratio. Anyone who's studied economics, supply and demand, knows that has to lead to a price increase. Is that true?
I go along with that comment there, and that's what I alluded to in my earlier response. It's just not sustainable. I mean, like you say, there'll be people in America who are investing in these ETFs on a monthly basis. So they're putting in, like, maybe putting $100, $1,000 a month. And these funds have to buy Bitcoin to make sure that the fund is able to manage the level of investment, the level of rise in the Bitcoin, the way Bitcoin price also falls. We've seen that happen in 2022 as we saw the bear period there. But there is no other investment asset that can compete with Bitcoin in the way Bitcoin has over the last 15 years. So you have to have the Bitcoin in the fund. It's the only way that you can manage the expectation of the individual. So this isn't like me and you going to the bank and putting $1,000 in the bank and getting our 2% interest for our deposit account, because what the bank will do is they'll take that $1,000 and they'll give it to someone who wants to buy a house, and they'll lend it them, and they'll get 6% from the lending fee and pay your 2%. So they're making a nice margin there out of your money. That's not the same with Bitcoin. They have to at least match that sort of return. And the only way to do that, these funds have got to go out there and buy Bitcoin. So as soon as that money goes into the fund, they're buying Bitcoin with that money there, so they can deliver that return that the investor, who now has a vehicle to actually have a Bitcoin-backed product in an investment wrapper that they can use for their pensions, they can use for their normal day-to-day investments. Whereas before, a lot of people can't necessarily invest directly into Bitcoin itself. So these funds are giving them an opportunity to do that. And, how does a normal investor invest? I mean, in my previous experience, when I've invested, I've gone into funds and, over a period of, say, 10 years, and invested the same amount every month. And hopefully at the end of 10 years, you end up getting a nice return. And, so people who are looking to invest in Bitcoin now might be doing it, in sort of like a retirement fund or in a long-term investment plan. And they want to make sure that they benefit from, when the Bitcoin price rises over those cyclical periods that we talked about in many of our podcasts. If they're in for the long term, then we fully expect the Bitcoin price to rise substantially over the next few years. And that's not just me saying that. That's people far more knowledgeable about in the space than I am. That's these people who are actually running these funds. So the Cathie Woods of these worlds, who sort of have a really good understanding. That's their business to understand how the market's going to react to a certain asset class, and many more. I mean, you mentioned Michael Saylor. I mean, he's probably he's took a company that was valued at, I don't know, less than $500 million at one point in time, to a company that now has a market capitalization approaching 10 billion in not that many years. So, they're still doing, that company still does what it did, 3 or 4 years ago. It's a software company with revenues of I'm going to say around about $500 million a year, revenues like that. And they're making a profit on those revenues. So it's a profitable business, but they've just leveraged everything they can out of that business to grow their Bitcoin hodl. And they sit on, 200,000 coins. So when we talk about, Marathon Digital, the biggest, public listed mining company, with near 16,000 coins of unrestricted access to, and then you look at MicroStrategy, who've got something like 12 times that amount in their vault, and they're not a mining company, then you're talking about different leagues of investment. And these funds now added together have got more than MicroStrategy have got in their vaults. So now these funds added together have got more than 200,000 coins. And going back to in 1 month, if you say that 900 Bitcoins mined a day and 30 days in a month, that's 27,000. And these companies or these funds have accumulated 8 times a monthly amount in the first month. When does that pressure stop? When are they stuck? We have seen the price go up a little bit, but I mean, if they maintain that level of buying because people are investing regular amounts into these funds, then we're going to see some price action, because not everybody wants to sell Bitcoin at the moment. And like anything, even like when you see these shares that are being shorted and people are trying to buy the share and they can't have access to the share, they have to pay a premium. You see, like, we had a couple of years ago, the GME story and all these other stocks that, AMC, I think it was, the cinemas, all had these sort of like short cycles like that. And Bitcoin could go into that sort of like, frenzy that they're trying to, get as much Bitcoin, and they'll pay a premium to get it, and the price will rise. I've got a small amount in my wallet, and, I haven't sold any Bitcoin since I first bought Bitcoin. It's just there. It's, I know some days it goes up and some days it goes down, but I look at the long-term trajectory. And if you draw a line from when Bitcoin started to where we are now, it's like every other asset class. It has its days when it's down, days when it's up, but the line is going in that 45-degree direction, constantly north.
Yeah, it sure is. And that's a similar approach I have. I have about 20% exposure within my whole crypto sphere or portfolio that's actual Bitcoin holdings. Now, Anthony, you brought up two really interesting things. One is non-miners who are building Bitcoin balance sheets, like MicroStrategy. There's a general assumption in the industry that we're going to start to see some of the big players like, say, Apple, with tremendous cash reserves on their balance sheet, start to experiment with Bitcoin. It's hard not to when you see companies like Tesla, MicroStrategy. They're seeing those massive gains, and with this new accounting treatment now, able to report on it, it's hard to turn a blind eye there, right? You brought the pension plans up, the retirement plans. We've been starting to see that a lot as well. And the other one, Anthony, is the fear of missing out, or FOMO, that you mentioned. I think that definitely will play a factor here. I think Bitcoin is going to become a major platform or pillar within the election cycle in the United States this year. I think as we cross those big milestones like 50, 75, 100,000 US, you're going to start to see mainstream media picking up on the Bitcoin story. That's going to lead to more of a pandemonium. And now all these people have access through their brokerage accounts and these ETFs to buy it literally at their fingertip without having to set up any passwords or code phrases or wallets or anything like that maybe they're not comfortable with. Now, two other quick things here, Anthony, before I let you go. I wanted to talk about some upcoming speaking events. You mentioned Michael Saylor. I believe he's on the guest list for the Bitcoin conference this year, which is going to be held in Nashville. So last year it was in Miami. Anthony, you've actually been invited to speak at that event. So why don't you give us a little bit of information in terms of what's going on and what you're going to be talking about in July here?
So yeah, I did my first event in Amsterdam back in October. And I was very fortunate to be on a panel with three other great people. There was Amanda Fabiano, who's now director of TeraWulf, Nazar Khan, who's the co-founder of TeraWulf, and Aidan Killick, who's the CEO of Hive Digital. So that was a great panel to be on. And we talked about everything mining really, and the reason I think I've been invited to Nashville again is going to be more focused on the mining stocks. That's my sort of like area where I focus on for the last over three years now. And it's going to be an interesting one there. I was on a podcast for Swan Media only last week, and they're already reaching out to invite me to the Pacific Bitcoin Conference, which will be later in the year. So there might be 2 trips from the UK across to the US this year to do these trips. I do get requests to go to some of the smaller ones as well. So my focus this year is to try and get to more conferences, to meet more people, to gain more knowledge like everybody does in this space, because we're all learning. Everyone's learning. Michael Saylor's learning on a daily basis. So I'm sure that you and me, Bryce, are in the same position as that. We're learning on a daily basis. And the way to do that is to meet these people and to have these conversations with them, face to face, and you pick up so much good information. They are good conferences to be part of. The conference in Nashville is between the 25th and the 27th of July. So hopefully, some of the subscribers, can make an effort to get there. As I say, I enjoyed the Amsterdam conference, got to meet a lot of people, kept in touch with a lot of people that I met there, and become friends with a lot of people as well. So they are good conferences. We're all there for the same purpose, to learn and to see some of these great speakers that are going to be coming to these conferences, because they do get the best speakers, the Bitcoin conference. But yeah, looking forward to it this year.
Should be good. This is our first trip as Power Mining Analysis. This will be my first Bitcoin conference. We just booked all our flights. So for anyone watching and I'm going to be in attendance this year, we'd love to meet up with you and have a discussion down there. Anthony, it's nice to hear you're being repeatedly or invited back to these channels. I know we invited you in November and now we can't get rid of you around here. You seem to be back every day. So the final thing I wanted to chat about, Anthony, the Patreon group. This launched last month. We haven't chatted about it in any of our recent podcasts, but there's a lot of content in there. I obviously subscribe. I see all the updates, a lot of good discussion, and gives some access to these CEO interviews that we alluded to at the start of the video. Anthony, what have you seen in the Patreon since launch?
Yeah, I mean, we've literally launched just over a month ago, as you quite rightly said, and it was really to give an opportunity for people who've been following my analysis on Twitter, where I'm going to be providing more of a deep dive in some of these companies. So the people that are in the Patreon, they're going to get to see a little bit more information about some of these results that are coming out, be able to do far more detailed analysis, detailed comparison. They'll get to see that information first before it goes out publicly. And they'll have the head start on other people. So that work, effectively gets done for them to start, when they're starting their own due diligence process. Again, with all the interviews with the CEOs, they go on the Patreon as well, so they've got access to those. I created a Discord channel, and that's a way of letting the subscribers themselves have that conversation, and I've been adding to that as well. So it's a way they can, it only grows with everybody contributing, so it can't just be one person, myself contributing everything. So the Discord channel is a good way of people who are like-minded, like myself, find information out on a company, put it on the Discord channel, share it with everybody else there, and that's been a great way of starting. We've got about, I think, like 170 members at the moment, so it's going really well in the first month, and it's going to grow and grow, and I want to have so many more ideas to do, like a weekly update, even when lots of news stories come out in one day, do a daily update so that people, if they've missed something, it gives them an opportunity to find out where all that information is in one place. But very positive up to now. Enjoying it. Lots of interaction with subscribers. So we have communication channels in the Patreon itself. They ask questions. I try and answer all the questions I've been doing on social media. So I am more now emphasizing my focus on the Patreon, because that's the people that are prepared to invest in what we're trying to achieve here. And it's as I say, the first month's been good, and hopefully it maintains that. So yeah, good up to now.
Yeah, and I'm sure it will continue that trajectory. So a couple good updates there, Anthony. Great first edition of our Fireside Chat series here, and we look forward to the interviews coming up this week. We'll see you back on the channel in a couple of days.
Thanks for having me, Russ.